Good morning, everybody. As school students, December probably used to be the most awaited month of the year because it used to have your school's Christmas party. You also had the opportunity to flaunt your wardrobe the only day of the year. And then it began you used to begin a long break, winter break. But as our professional career began here in media, December starts that long haul of 2-3 months, which begins with PR people flooding us with year-ender quotes, what the year ahead will look like. Then January starts with what the industry is expecting from the budget. Then 1st February is probably when our inbox gets flooded with everybody, irrespective of if those expectations are met in the budget, they'll rate the budget 7 on 10. 7 on 10 is the base. But, as I was preparing this morning and the main topic was the outlook for 2024. And if I rewind, last year around this time, December 2022, when we were looking at what 2023 will be looking like, the global commentary was that 2023 will be tougher than 2022 on every aspect. But now that we are just the last month, midway December of this year, we found that at least there's a consensus that 2023 was not that bad as it was expected last year around this time. So panelists, my first question to you, and then in your opening comments, I want to understand that irrespective of your sectors, how was the performance, how would you rate the performance of Indian startups, the ecosystem in this year gone by? What have been your reflections on the performance of this ecosystem? In your words, if you would like to start, Nalin.
Yeah, sure. Hi everyone, Nalin Saluja. I'm co-founder and CTO at Virohan. So in my perception, I think the year 2023 turned out to be a year of resilience, not just for Indian startups, but I think the Indian economy as a whole. We saw a lot of pain across, United States and Europe, but I think India really withstood because of the core strengths of the economy, I think. There is a lot, when you dissect the data, sure, there is some things to be said about, the way the capital has flown out of the country in certain months and but overall, if you just sort of zoom out, I think we have been, based on the domestic investment as well as international investment, when all the trends are put together, I think the economy has held up reasonably well. The impact on startups, I think a lot of belt tightening had to be done. I think we knew that coming into the year, that the way the money flow was happening for the last the previous 5 years, that was going to change. What happened is as expected. Maybe it was not as bad as it was expected and again, that was because it's India. I think the belt tightening around the world was a lot more than we had to sort of undergo in India. But I think this much of belt tightening actually led to better discipline perhaps and has left the ecosystem a lot stronger and ready to take on the world. So I think in that sense it was a good year, and I look forward to what that unleashes in the next year or so.
Right. So a story of resilience. Pawan, your reading.
I can talk about I was at the heart of what was happening in Bangalore. Hardcore, again, we operate in Bangalore. I was seeing, many startups, especially, in my community, startups were, great startups were doing still fine. Moderates were just recovering, and the bad ones, were getting, cleaned out, out of the system. I think if you talk about in the country level, this thing, in the year 2022, when the capital inflow, almost, it started getting to, a downward trend, with the inflation rate, growing in the US. The recovery time expected was close to 9 quarters, and still I think, the position remains the same, that the recovery, was, it's going to be March 2025. Lately, what has happened, India has shown more endurance, I think more faster growth, inside. That year was tough. 2022 was extremely tough, for many startups. 23, what we saw actually recovery. we started seeing that startups every month, 1 or 2 rounds were started happening. People, I think the companies with poor balance sheets, they started understanding the importance of the mindset of running with important strong cash flows in mind, profitability in mind, the product quality increased. I think people, companies which didn't used to take care of customers, we started taking care of customers. So I think companies got back to basics, of what we're building, which is always the right thing, to do. I think in Bangalore, our view was, when COVID happened, our view was 50% of startups will shut down. Our view was the same thing, during this time. And I think what's happening that we are becoming better. Startups are becoming way stronger. That we can see here. I think funding is getting back. Again. I think I was reading, and I think the influx of the capital has been preponed to India. So I think overall the correction happened at the right time. And I think as a signal, I think our country is still leading the race globally. I think we should continue the momentum. I think all on track. I think we just keep doing it and keep building profitable and large companies from here. The timing looks right.
Thank you, Pawan. Arjun, your reading.
Yeah, I don't know much about the general innovation startups, but I know a lot about the climate tech sector. So I work in climate tech, and I would say this year is when CT becomes a new IT. Okay, climate tech is a new information technology. There's a lot of startups that are coming up, and I'll look at it from 3 perspectives. One is the demand, one is the talent, and one is the investors, right? In terms of demand, climate tech solutions are in extremely high demand, especially from businesses. Businesses want to decarbonize. They are looking for solutions everywhere. So that, I think this year that has accelerated a lot. In terms of talent, I think, young people usually like to go for hot industries, and there's nothing hotter than climate tech. So I find a lot of people from other industries looking for jobs in climate tech. So that has definitely happened. I've been in the sector for 9 years with my startup, and it's never been easier to hire people. There's never been better talent in the market than this year. Right. On the investment side, I think it's a little more nuanced view there. I think there are 3 stages. Early stage, then there's like the 10 to $50 million checks, and then there's beyond. Early stage capital has exploded this year. So many early stage deals, seed stage, Series A. Series B and C has been very, very slow. There are hardly any funds with 10 to $50 million, and that's the big gap. And then the large deals where large companies are being sold and big people, that's also happening a lot. So the middle is the missing piece, where I hope for more action next year. But the early stage and late stage are doing really, really well.
Right, I'll talk on the aspects of green jobs and of course funding a bit later as well. But Akshay, your reading as well, and especially for your sector, one of the news that dominated 2023 was the world searching for an obesity drug. So all of those developments, how do you see the sector for your company sector in the year gone by?
Hi guys, good morning, I'm Akshay. I started my career in 2008 in the UK as a private equity banker, and that was the year that the world witnessed a very large financial crisis. And if you look at that time, one learning was that during crisis, consumer preferences change. And I'll give you an example. There was nothing known as luxury chocolates before that. Okay. Suddenly in 2008, a whole new category came up with Godiva, Cadbury's, Boneville. Suddenly people realize that people don't have money and consumers want to spend on themselves. And they can't take holidays, so they're eating better chocolate and drinking better wine. So usually when you go through a crisis and you go through a period where interest rates are high, capital is difficult to obtain, you also have to realize that how the consumer mindset starts to shift. And those who are able to identify that are the ones that survive. And I think that is what happened in the last 2 years, especially for our sector. Post-COVID, fitness and wellness became top of mind. And somebody mentioned that India had very strong fundamentals as an economy. We also have to realize that India is the only economy that moved from primary to a tertiary economy, right? We never had a secondary economy. So we never went through an industrialization phase. We went from agriculture straight to services. So which means people are a basic asset, right? That is the asset that drives the economy, people, services, IT, however you want to think, consulting, accounting, those are the sectors that are driving our economy by billing in dollars and paying in rupees. So this segment suddenly started understanding that people are the true asset. Fitness and wellness became top of mind. So now, how is our sector doing? I think once people realize that India is a very young country, like you said, obesity drug, a lot of people made a lot of noise about India being the diabetic capital, the hypertension capital, obesity capital, but that's all incorrect data. Actually, India is the youngest population in the world with an average age of 28. So these people are not sick, but somehow the investors before COVID were trying to solve for people who are sick. So a lot of money went into people who were solving for diabetes or people who was, because these are people who will always pay you. So the mindset, the noise that was created by the venture capitalists or the investors were very profit-centric and for their own intentions. Today, the world has changed. Today, suddenly people have risen up to the fact that they don't want to be diabetic, they don't want to be hypertensive, and everybody wants to invest in themselves. And similarly, the companies are behaving like that. The government is behaving like that. So I think a lot of things changed when people get paused to reflect. So while capital became low, opportunities became low, I think the consumers responded very strongly, and that is the resilience that then transferred to the startup ecosystem. That's how I see it.
Right. Thank you, Akshay. I'm picking up some of the comments, Nalin, from the panelists. You know, Arjun talked about green jobs, and since you're in that sector that looks at workforce, he also talked about India's demographic dividend, the young population in India. I want to understand from you, Nalin, that what are the industry expectations, how they are changing when they are looking at workforce, and especially, you know, we are talking about a workforce which we call the Gen Z, how their expectations from their workplace are, what's the skill gap that persists, what are you seeing there in that space?
Yeah, happy to share my observations on that. I think I completely agree that, you know, the climate space, even fitness, these are categories that that have seen a significant boost in 2023. In terms of, you know, like how that is impacting the workforce development and workforce readiness, I think there, unfortunately, I have to say that I don't think that the impact is huge yet. That's not to take away anything from the sector, but it's starting from a very low base, right? So in terms of just numbers at a macro level, I don't think that we are there yet where green jobs is, you know, like, say, making a big enough impact to a country the size of India. That's part one. I think that's just a function of low denominator. The growth rate is definitely very strong, but the denominator will still take time to grow, right? In terms of the aspiration of the youth, I think there is more clarity. I think so. Like, we are operating in the healthcare space, right? And we train students to across various different job roles in the healthcare space, across curative, diagnostic, rehabilitative, administrative services. And what we've seen is that there is a significant demand from students for job roles that come with a certain degree of respect and a certain degree of recognition in society, right? Anything that does not bring that with the job itself does not meet the aspirational value of the student. I think that, and we have sort of stuck to that as well, because for us the student, you know, is the main customer. So we only offer programs where that aspiration is definitely met for the students. But I think as you know, like, I think as it was mentioned that, you know, India went from a primary to a tertiary sort of economy, and so our aspirations have also, as a population, have also sort of taken that leap, which is, you know, but there is a burden on the industries now to be able to meet that aspiration. For some of the new sectors, like, I think healthcare is still one of the, you know, older sort of sectors. It's also growing fast, but it's still, you know, already the third largest employer in the country. But, you know, like, how new sectors have to attract youth, attract talent for the front lines, I think that's something that is yet to play out. And for that, a strong aspirational value has to be created by those sectors for the youth of the country. I think what happens when an operating theatre technician goes home and, you know, represents himself in a community, or how their family feels about their job, does, you know, like and I don't mean any disrespect to anyone, but, like, does a technician at say a solar power plant able to feel the same way. I think that's something the sector as a whole has to address. There is no reason that they should feel any different. All jobs are equally respectful, but that doesn't mean that perceptions don't exist. And I think the industry as a whole has still has to address them.
Would like to add something or more of going deep down on the green jobs aspect, considering we are just at the last day of COP28 today, and clearly a lot of developments there regarding green jobs, and especially in the context of India. If you could tell us some deep insights on that.
Yeah, I mean, I talk daily to people who are looking for a green job, and that's my job to give them one. I think that hunger just to take the job because it's green is not there. Okay, we're still a developing country. People want the basics to be in place. I think more than the green element, the regular startup element is what I feel like. People want more responsibility, more openness, more ability to make decisions. And better work-life balance. These things are kind of on top of their list for when they're choosing jobs. I think the green element is like a nice to have at the moment. But I think as we see more and more successful companies coming out of the sector, then the green element will come in. I think I agree with him. Right now it's a little bit early. We don't have enough success stories out there which are huge and making a splash for that green element to attract the people. Of course, there's a top slice of people who are very attracted by the green element. But if I need 100 people, there'll be 10 like that. And 90 will join because of salary and what is the additional responsibility they're getting, what is the freedom they're getting, what is the culture at work. So I think we're still living in that era.
Very rightly put, Arjun. One of the things, Pawan, that I picked up from Akshay's opening remarks was his emphasis on the Indian consumer's propensity towards luxury and premiumization trend, and the disposable income that this generation is having. They're on a splurging spree. How is that playing out in your sector?
Yeah, so I'll just give a background of Betterhalf. So Betterhalf started as India's first matrimony app without parents. So that's when urban brides and grooms come in. So their behavior is different, than parents. They're more aspirational. Over the last 18 months, we started our weddings division, and we'll come to the luxury products. And I think then, we became, India's first end-to-end wedding planning and fulfillment platform. So we take care of your end-to-end wedding planning with full service ownership. And mostly, to people, with their wedding budget of 5 lakh to 50 lakh. It's not a small budget in any way. What we see that, these young people, they're quite aspirational. They want to create memories. So anything when you look into, I can talk about my sector, vet tech. Venue booking, they have very different choices, whether it's resort, lawns, marriage gardens, forts, palaces, 5-star hotels, 7-star hotels. So there's an element of this is how I would like my life to look into. If you look into decorations today, we offer hundreds of designs. If you look 10 years, 20 years back, right, you just have 2 or 3 options that a venue is going to show you. That's their photography. You have tons of choices. Then there's bridal makeup, hairstylist. Now you need somebody, a designer, for the jewelry who's going to visit your home, show you catalogs. There are great, companies out there, like let's say Bluestone, or maybe Carrot Lane. They're going to show you, different designs. So it's now becoming pre-ordered than just going to shop or any company like Betterhalf or any jewelry shop or anybody. It's like you like the design. There is a customization that's actually happening, and you wait for some time. And then there is a service element where you're hand-holding them and you're giving that experience, for them. This is what is happening to, I think, urban young professionals, from our view. And I think, look, it's westernized in some way. It's absolutely okay as long as, they feel that's their part, that's, their memory. As companies, our job is to serve our clients. So wherever they're heading to, we'll continue to give a great professional service to them, keep powering them with good products and services that they need, and in this, build a sustainable business out of it.
I'll now shift my focus to a technology that started picking up last year in November with ChatGPT, generative AI, and it has developed so much in this 1 year that we saw a classic boardroom drama just a few weeks back. From a Indian startup ecosystem point of view, I want to understand that, of course, we'll talk about how it has impacted or being deployed in your particular sectors, but at large, how startups across sectors, how they have been at it, about it in the last 1 year. what do you see that path going to on the trajectory that it will be taking? Akshay, if you would like to start.
Yeah, well, I guess Nalin is the CTO, so he'll have more inputs. But from a business standpoint, I think we had built an AI coaching algorithm in 2017. Today, it is the largest in the world. We coach about 7 lakh people a month. But when we had done that in 2017, people thought we were stupid. People thought it was something that nobody will ever pay for. Videos, coaching is something you get on YouTube. And people didn't understand how important it was. And today it became a buzzword. Today people pay us for it. Suddenly, back in 2017, 18, it was something that we had to give out for free because we wanted to keep getting data and become more intelligent. Today people are paying us millions of dollars for that same facility. So I think because there has been so much chatter about it, acceptability has grown amongst the users that AI or intelligence is something that doesn't necessarily have to come from a human being. It is something that, especially for repetitive tasks. From a business standpoint, I think most of our repetitive, menial tasks have been taken over by any sort of generative AI. Google has one, Bing has one, ChatGPT is one. There are lots of other models that Salesforce has one. Depending on what tool you're using, almost everybody has some sort of generative AI capability. And the only thing we have to understand is that it only works on the rules that we set. So as long as you're clear about what your intentions are for use and how you want to establish your rules, I think it is very, very helpful. For a lot of people in our sector where we are into aggregating an unorganized economy and unbundling a previously bundled service to make it affordable, like what we call a shared economy or democratization. There is a lot of repetitive tasks from gym to gym, from human being to human being. So a lot of the efficiency comes from AI for us in our sector. And I think everybody who's coming, so I was I'm a judge at this DU Shark Tank type of thing. And I get to meet all these young entrepreneurs who are currently in college, right? And there are people who are running 2 crore worth of businesses a month. And these are college students, right? First year, second year. And I barely could get to class. And these are guys who are running businesses on Flipkart, have broken the algorithm at Flipkart, have the ways they're doing these things. Some people have patents. And when you talk to them, all of them are equipped on how to use ChatGPT. Everybody knows how to hack it. Everybody knows how to use it for not for their academic work, but to do a side hustle. Right. So I think the way it is empowering Gen Z is something that we never faced as a millennial or as somebody who was born in the 80s. I think it is definitely a tool that, if used correctly, is going to be very helpful as we scale. And there's a lot of people to serve in our economy, right, and a lot of skills that don't necessarily need to, they don't need to learn it at school. I think those menial things and those repetitive tasks, you can rely on ChatGPT to use.
So clearly the efficiency and the pickup by the Gen Z population. Nalin, what are you seeing across sectors? What are the sectors that you've seen that have become some early adopters, some sectors that are yet to pick up? What's your reading on that?
I think in terms of the sectors that are early adopters versus the sectors that are not yet adopting, I think that trend I don't think is different for Gen AI versus technology in general. I think any sector that has been a laggard in adopting technology, let's say agriculture, for one, I don't think that I have personally come across any applications of Gen AI in those sectors. So I think that trend I don't think is shifted. The adopters of technology are still the adopters of technology, and the adopters, people who sectors that are not doing that already, I think there's still, because there's some other structural challenges that are maybe holding them back, right? So none of that has changed. But in terms of in terms of how what I have observed is that, of course, I think the potential of this technology, it's ultimately a general purpose technology, and it will fundamentally alter all industries, I think, eventually. But there was a certain level of excitement and enthusiasm when we first, if in the first sort of exposure to ChatGPT about a year ago perhaps. Since then, I think, there was an expectation about how quickly the world will change. I think it is changing, but I think that expectation has been tempered by, the challenges of execution, because as you start to execute, you realize that the burden of designing interfaces that can actually take advantage of this is still there. The technology does have the propensity to start hallucinating, and that requires a lot of work. There is limited amount of context that you can provide at any one point of time, and and you have to be able to condense the right information in that. So there's a lot of sort of iterations that have to happen, which makes it very important that that every sort of use case is very well defined, very well executed, very well. The interface is also guiding the user to exactly that particular use case. It shouldn't be that like a use case built for solving doubts is being used for psychological examination or something like that, right? Because it won't be able to handle that. But it'll love to sort of go astray. So like I think just challenges like that, those are on the execution side, and I think that's sort of what everyone's sort of going through right now. But I think the change is about to come. Like it's inevitable, and every piece of human interaction box in the product design roadmap is now seeing some sort of generative AI being thrown in there, and I think that's exciting. It's just it's still a lot of hard work for all the technology teams.
Right. Thank you, Nalin. Pawan, yes.
So I'll add something because we're at the forefront of doing this. So I agree with Nalin. I think it depends on the consumer audience. If it's very service oriented or less tech savvy, then it's going to take more time. Maybe multi years, sometimes 5-10 years to get there. For people who are quite tech savvy, let's say in our case, it's all it's the urban brides and grooms, mainly metro cities, tier 1 cities. They're just used to tech. I think 3 years back, we got a US patent on inventing single-click matching technology. So just based on your name, gender and date of birth, we predict your religion, community, your partner preferences based on, I think the city demographics. We look into your median height, sometimes your annual salary, and we match all of these. And you'll be surprised that when we predict something, especially when we match people, for matrimony, 80% of our users don't even change their fields. And that goes to even your language and community. So this was the first invention. So this was true, I think, in one side, I think the AI part that we invented. Fast forward, if you go to Betterhalf.ai, today you will find a wedding product. So you type something, maybe, let's say type haldi decor, or let's say type engagement ring, or jewelry, anything that comes to your mind. So whether it's jewelry or decor, or photography, or ring, or bridal dress, hairstylist, you'll see a lot of photos. That's going to pull up. And if you like a photo, you will see similar photos. And if you like one, let's say finally, you will see description of those photos, and to be updated, with pricing. So we see that for a consumer audience, I think India is ready. The other product that we have, which is first time that has happened in India, if you like any venue, which is usually, in the past you have to travel 1-2 hours, especially in a weekend. You have to go there, and you can't cover more than 2-3 venues, just if you're looking for wedding. Today you can do it at home. It's immersive, as if you are really, you're physically there. You can walk around, you can see banquet hall, lawns, you can get inside rooms. You can plan, your decor, over there. It's just very real. We have released it with 11 properties in India and Bangalore. We are just now going to launch in Delhi. That's how fast, our world is moving. And I think India is ready, as a country to absorb this tech from a consumer point. I call it convenience to them. Since on a B2C part, jobs are not directly linked because it's more about anything that you are looking at, the convenience of your time, sitting at your home, you have access to those products. So I think from consumer, I think this is real. I think AI is real. It's impacting our industry, I'm sure. Healthcare, it's impacting. Clean energy, it's impacting. Right. Your industry is going to impact. We just have to see that the pros has to be higher and higher, for people to absorb and use these technologies for their benefit.
Thank you, Pawan, for elaborating on those use cases. Arjun, yes. Right. 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 We'll focus that on the next question as well. But Arjun, given how COP28 is unfolding right now, we're talking about climate tech. You're in that sector. Now, obviously, when we're talking about the transition to a net zero economy, we're talking about energy transition. We're talking about carbon mitigation. What's the tech that is playing out in this sector? Of course, that's not possible without just being relying on renewable energy or
carbon mitigation. What's the tech playing out here in your sector, especially not just AI, but any of the disruptive technologies that are playing out?
Sure, thanks. So I think what the two technology, obviously one is IoT, right, which is making automation cheaper, much cheaper. So like, earlier if 1 out of 100 buildings was automated, now that's moved to like 40 out of 100.
Right.
So more buildings are and factories are being automated. So that's IoT just without AI. And then what AI is doing is making the IoT useful. So if earlier your automation system used to create hardly any value for you, now with AI, that automation system which you spend some money on is creating more value than the cost. So I think these are two extremely powerful trends. The efficiency with which you are able to run your processes is increasing dramatically. And I see a very different world from what was spoken about earlier, that the tech leaders are going to adopt. I mean, I have field engineers with diplomas and people with not even diplomas who are using ChatGPT today.
Right.
So I feel like everybody's using it. It's just that use is limited right now to better communication.
Right.
But I think with people building more tools, like for example, we are building an automation system that you can talk to. You don't have to understand the machine. You can just ask the system, okay, how's my machine performing today? What maintenance do I need to do?
Right.
And that's it. So I think those are really powerful revolutions that are coming, and the combination of these two, IoT and AI, is where a lot of value is being created.
Right. Akshay, I now would like to focus on the investment outlook, and especially how our homegrown startups have fared in the year gone by. 2023 was probably, as per many industry reports, was the worst in let's say the last 5 years, in terms of investments, in terms of funding. What have been some of the factors that have played out on this front? How resilient the startups were tackling these challenges? And going forward, given the fundamentals of the Indian economy, given the indicators that are there on the macroeconomic front, how do you see that playing up in the year ahead?
Okay, this is a very large question with a very wide ambit, but I'm going to address it. It is true that we heard a lot of noise about funding being a funding winter, and that was obvious. People also discussed it, that inflation was high, interest rates were high, and after the hedging costs and stuff, it's very difficult for LPs to make money in India, and the hurdle rates become very expensive. So it is not true that capital is not available. Capital is there. It has not been deployed today, because all the LPs and GPs have already put money in the Indian corpus. It has just not been deployed. However, while funding announcements were low, I think there were a lot of announcements about people turning EBITDA positive, people becoming profitable, which I think is something to celebrate. I think there has been too much focus on more liquidity not coming into the market, but I think the celebration should be about how many startups suddenly became resilient and declared EBITDA positivity, which meant that every investor who had invested in the India story is actually seeing those companies turn profitable and turn meaningful, right? That is what people were afraid of, that okay, stupid money is going into the economy. Are these companies ever going to become profitable? And yes, the answer is all of them are almost becoming EBITDA positive. And this I'm talking about large companies, right? Paytm, Oyo, Zomato, everyone's gotten there. Swiggy is almost getting there. Now for younger startups, I think India is very focused on a vanity metric that we are home to 1 lakh startups. I think we should start changing the KPIs we look at. We should look at how many jobs have been created, how many new jobs have been added, how many more households have prospered. I think instead of just focusing on the word startup, it is time for the media houses also to focus on the value these startups are adding in this economy, which is, as we discussed, a tertiary economy. And most of these tech-led startups are people-heavy, right? So how are these people becoming more globally relevant? How are their skills growing? I think that is what the focus needs to be. So how do I see the macro outlook? I think, okay, man, there are things that we can't control, right? We just banned, we just banned ethanol production from sugar cane, right? So there are a lot of political things that we cannot control, right? There are commodities we have to import, crude oil we have to bring in. So the economy runs on many variables, and it is not ceteris paribus. So only for the startups, I think 2024 will be great. I think till 2026 will be a great time, because as we go along, all these GPs who have money, they have a certain amount of period where they need to invest that money and then start going for exits. Very few GPs, and I come from private equity and did that for many years, very few GPs have the strength to return their capital to the LP without deploying it. because they think there are no opportunities. And no Indian GP, India is a very illiquid market. There are barely 19 funds of any standing, and most of them have raised money globally. So they will deploy. They will not be able to return the capital. So I think 24, 25, 26 you'll certainly see a lot of announcements about funding. But I hope we continue to celebrate what we're celebrating today, which is how the startups have become EBITDA positive or are gunning towards profitability at scale. I think that is what needs to be celebrated.
Thank you, Akshay, for summing that up. Nalin, your thoughts on that?
No, I actually completely agree with Akshay. I think the timelines are different for me, but I think that every person that you ask will probably have a different guess on that, so that's okay. I agree with everything that Akshay said. I think that there is significant amount of capital still available out there. This year of driving efficiencies that we've had, I think that brought out a lot of great announcements about profitability from the companies that have already listed, which is also something that we needed as an India story. We needed that because the generation of startups before that, say the Flipkart, like we didn't see that go to the public market, becoming profitable, becoming mature organizations, right? So we needed that life cycle to essentially prove out the India startup story. And as a whole, as a country, we need a lot more of startup activity, right? If we have to actually meaningfully and gainfully employ the number of Indians that actually make use of the demographic dividend that is available to the country today, we just need a lot more of this story playing out. And I think so in that sense, from a very macro perspective, even though the present in different contexts can be slightly painful, but I think in a very sort of macro sense, this year was very good. And I think it'll reap benefits in the next 3 years for sure.
Right. Pawan, we have 2.5 minutes left, and Arjun, your quick take on it.
I agree to, I think, the points in terms of more startups should keep coming in. I think we have to balance the initial phase of testing, experimentation, which will take more time and the business model has not evolved. I think next year, with many blog posts and something, it's going to be 4x harder, as of, compared to 2021 if you're, raising funds. Now, how do you survive? I think the signal is become close to profitability. If you look into financial sheet, I think your line item is simple, right? It's revenue, minus, let's say if it's a take rate, that's kind of like your gross margin. After that you have contribution margin 1, which is largely if you have operational cost and variable. Contribution margin 2, it's a variable marketing cost. So very simple. And then you have net contribution margin. I think our view is all startups should always at the time have a view of their contribution margin. You should be profitable. That's how you should balance your risk. After that, it's EBIT. EBIT is just all your corporate head and salary. If you have that, you can have that balance. I think everybody, largely what we have seen, every investor is willing to fund any marginally, profitable contribution margin positive, and EBIT, they'll say, hey, it's fine, we'll take care of it. If you do that, I think, we'll survive any venture. And more than that, it's actually better because if in every round you are that systematically strong financially, you are not overly dependent on external capital. When you need your business to scale, you can raise those capital. But let's say at Series B, C rounds, you are more optimized. D, E, F round, you're heading towards profitability, and when you look into IPO, you're already profitable company, which didn't happen. And now actually, companies which we look up to, they're turning around, which is a great signal for India.
Thank you, Pawan. Arjun?
Yeah, I think a similar sentiment. I think there's more than enough money available, for good companies. I think the focus should be on building long-term value.
Right.
I think there's a short-termism there amongst founders as well, and I agree with what was being said that valuation and money raising is celebrated, but long-term value creation needs to be celebrated more,
right,
and encouraged more amongst the startup community. Money, I think there's plenty available.
Right. Thank you, panelists, for your time this morning and for talking to us and giving the outlook for 2024 and how the resilience story continues and India's economy story continues. We'll have one quick question from the audience if anybody would like to ask. No questions? Thank you so much. Thank you so much, panelists.
Thank you.